Good morning, Genrin Pache Tashidale. And good morning, Katrina. Welcome to all our participants online. So we begin with some prayers and recitations. You'll find the link in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world supreme guide to beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born in this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I'm supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms, unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all things, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, this ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, for land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure, venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Dig sången.
Ja.
Okay, some Pandita. Oh, Geshe Yeshi Kasha, get Amdila. Oh, Nick Kermushenda, Sama, Kindimba Lenjada, Kenyada. Oh, Shenda Sangi Sama out to the list.
So good morning to everyone who is listening.
Oh, yeah, time on today. What the tongue, what is Toshan? Oh, dear, dear Kasura. But then the water will almost wake up some good. And you Kasura. Kanji Rawa Juji Tunabas. Kanji Rawa Juji Tunaba, getting Dirtan Zimbar Machina. Yasa lo e shawan Juju, Telechina Kanga long yours. She Sumbatarwa. Kanji Rawa Juji Tunabas. Kanga Chesta Tandangarazu Kanga, Milut of the Ordo. Tenjog Milut of the Ordo. Kanji Tenjog Milutita was Toba Kanga Chesum Gordo. Rawa Juji Tunabas. And Ke Cholan Junada, Ra, Landurji Chawa Karulan Jubena, so Rawagatone, Jujuare Sungurdo. And Timbe Yuna never it. Tanda me in Jitan come the net ordo. Oh, Tiliatene di Pena di Sungura. Mi Pauchi, Timbe Yuna never said, Ra, Mene Chimale Java Tarsere. Mi Pauchi, so Timbe Yuna net. And each one make it to Damji Shani, Kachomara. Chimale Java, the Ranch and the Cocarchan, a chair, you and I sincere Sigarangazo. Oh, yeah. Kanji Rawa Juji Tunaba, getting there. There Dan Zimbar Mechina, oh, dear Rawa Yebe Kamdelia, make Sonsum like Ketchig, Lunga Yusum Yekone, Shala Sawa Pangde, Rawa, and then Jurki Milu Yata was a top of Machina, oh, and Nason March of Long Sasuna. Can it chisu Tavshi Sukaria launch the Taro Chigre Chetway or Marisugora? Then a me power she said, telling me only care the Peshada. Me power she Kamba Lakba to Su Tamje, and you Lumba Tombachina Yushayuna. Tinico Kaja Yomarwa, or Tina Shingarazu son much Kesasuna. And they Tambunga to me Lumbate power at the time, Miguel the power in a Kagacha or Marisugora. Tandangazu Milikene, Yaboche Church to Rawache Tungete, Ne Power me power de Chimba Mavacha Rawangatone, and this was a Timbe Yuna never nation Sungora. Me power de Soso Suchi Tam Mavacha Rawanko and Karachi Junachena, and Karina Chetuachura, or Tiku of Chiku Resunda. Kanji Rawan Jujin Tunaba, getting Dirita, Yansa, Niasola Maluache. Ya Gabachi Chegores. This was so like by your Tikandecha Ursana, Shala Che and Miku, Lunga Yusuko Miku Chupa, Chinuji Kiwatu Etera. Getting the tender Machabi in Asugora. Yansa Loya Shawan Jujubas, Yansa Nason Lamachi, Lonsasona, Tundra Chilikesona. Tenekagache Omardo, Tibara Sanasa, Mother Kiwatu Omara, Tagin me power the Tamche. Kangbalagwa Kangatsu Tamje, and it Lumba Tombachili Yushana Shiri, Tako Kagachi Omardo, Otina Shiri, this was that. Tarin Militobande, and then Mantaya, Kawachima Susu, Kawan made a lana cutie, or Tindre, young Chido, Sangure, Sungudwa, or a teacher.
So here, as Chandrakirti states in his entry to the Middle Way, right now, if, when free and living with favorable conditions, we do not retain this status we enjoy, we will fall into the abyss and be at the mercy of others. What could enable us to rise up again from such a state? So right now we have this kind of human life where we have autonomy, we have all of the sort of favorable conditions to be able to engage in virtuous activities, to be able to distinguish between what we should adopt and what we should abandon. So it's not just, again, that we have been born as a human, but we have kind of all of the favorable conditions. We live in a conducive sort of place. We have the ability to engage in positive actions. And so our state right now is likened to sort of being like a hero who is totally unbound, who is free to kind of go out and do whatever we want. But if we, instead of engaging in positive actions and abandoning the causes for lower rebirths, the causes for birth in the 3 lower realms being those kinds of actions that are harmful to others, the non-virtuous 10 non-virtues and so forth, if we don't refrain from those and instead fall into that kind of state, it's as though it's like a heroic person, a hero that is all bound up, their hands and feet tied, and they're like left or abandoned in some kind of isolated area. There's nothing they can do. They're totally without the kind of autonomy and freedom, those opportunities that we had before. So right now we have the opportunity, we have the kind of freedom to do whatever sort of positive, virtuous actions that we want, to be able to distinguish from what we should adopt and what we should abandon. But if we don't take advantage of this, instead engaging in harmful actions, engaging in the 10 non-virtues, then falling into those lower realms, say we're born as an animal, we have no ability to engage in virtuous actions. We'll basically be constantly doing non-virtue. And then how could we get up out of that position, out of that sort of place? Like a hero, someone who's very strong and able, but if they are bound up where they can't use their hands or their feet and they're tossed into some sort of empty place, they're unable to do anything. And so again, right now we should recognize the kind of preciousness of the opportunity that we have, and rather than letting it go to waste, we should take advantage of the life and the kind of conducive conditions that we have.
Oh yeah, I do, sir. Oh, this one's that, the castle. Teacher Jave Chimbe Tam Genesigua. Sanja Chumden de Paru Chimba True Sonrava. Chimba Children Saba, some day Shirabla Soba True Sonretina and Tambo Tambutele, Chimba de Geshe Yeshi Sonra. Chimbe Tam de Tambo. Caresana, Joa Candecilana, Co, Ne Lu Longjola Soba to the Pusum Soba Chimana, and the Churdan Chu Sayatoya Tende Janja Kangina Chune. Chö samluta tende tanya chi yungu marwa o ti indi tsa ko kasore chimba tawa le tene kewa chimba longju kya chimba yungu yuza kewa chimba rangi longju ki mabung e tondalia ko kyo ndigun tewa ngundi chinse mi tsangma tewa dewarba ngara mili chashana negab ji tewa de kalita yungu risina ne lu longju pesun soba kange ki mabung bachi kore to ti yunga Nelly Longe Pusum Soba Yatelia, Chimbeton and Soba Tendretin Yongu Ordon. Neda Longe Pusum Soba Yate. Or tea and dear Longe Pusum Soba Yonane, Nega will cook Kangi Yongu Marton. Or tea do Casore. Tichi Cave Chimbetams and Tambu Chimba Cation which is so good. Teach Elia Anita or Tachimba Butania, Longe Chimbo Yongre, Kena Chema. 강에 연구 말때 티키라테 추tum 야부 마소나 녀와 예다 던도 잡던데 깨바이나 근데 랑게 침바 타와라 소보 롱제데 롱 야부지 쩌투에 연구 말와 룬드버타 치 던도 던데 깨나 카시 롱주 첨부 연구하래 이나 그 배추치야다 양자 침바 타와다 던데 쩌네 롱제 투고요 말도 말아도 도와 연구도와 Kitendele Pesha Mabu shower set the Yongudwa. In the coach, you're the long church, Marco, Nema Chimbata and Debucha de Rede Ora, or tea in the teacher Cave, Chimbetam Jane, Sutum Chendru Tami Jabais, or Chimbatana Kera, Kiwa Sambuchi Lion Tondalia, Mikiwa Chudipa, Kiwachu the troop good at Ase. Or Timaduna Kera Chimbatana, Chimbata and Debutu Kanga. Your member really many pecho yabu chetu mare, and the Mahobana yabu chimba yanga chimbatan, logi chimbo yoe, tende chetu mare sungora. Teacher Cave chimbetam zene, sudim chendru tam yenzabas. Miguel chupa Kewachu Trubia, Shala Tsoapangures, Tipana, and the ten cabarsen, Lada meat your top to Guada. Oh, make it your pan, George Madruina, and it's Kewa member linked Tito, Titelia, Dribble Lonju Chambuchona, Shida Pechu Chetu Marisongora. Oh, Chimbe Lonju done teaching Gavia Chimbe Tamjane, Sutum Chimbe Tamjan Saba Ese. Chimbe Cheso, Sutum Cheso, do a dictation for Ese, Songora. Tina Singarazo, Sendeli Church in Gericina, Chamba Niji Chanju, Samla Sova Conguina, Tati Comna, Kawachima, Sutum di Awamasuna, Kawachima Nesona Kenati Yanga, Nyamdu, the Peche Yabu, Kona Kondo Petu Mare Samche, and then make it Shanla Sawa Pambe, Sutum Soy the Peke, somebody te ora. Dicap Sutum Soy the so make it you Pankawachu to a Sutum dire. And the Kenya in a Kenya so Sutum Yungura, Kisu in a Telejaya, Teloi Pamayina, Sanga Sutum in a Carina, there's the Kona Kondo Pe Songuardo. Or TG, yeah, oh.
So here, the Buddha first taught, well, he taught the six perfections, the perfection of generosity and ethical conduct, patience, joyous effort, meditative concentration, and wisdom. But here, the Buddha first taught generosity, because generosity is important in order to have the kind of temporary needs met, in order that we might be able to enjoy enough possessions. If we are sort of bereft of food and the things that we need, then it's extremely difficult to engage in any other kind of practice or to even guard our ethical conduct. But so in order to alleviate those sorts of temporary difficulties, or in order to provide with what we need in terms of possessions, we engage in the practice of generosity, such that in our future lives we may be able to enjoy those kinds of things. But the Buddha quickly followed after the teaching on generosity. It says here again from Chandrakirti's Entry to the Middle Way that, therefore, having engaged in the discourse on generosity, the Buddha proceeded to the discourse on morality. And when the qualities spring up in the field of morality, enjoyment of their fruits will become continuous. So here, it is the case that we can engage in generosity such that we accumulate the causes to experience good wealth and possessions in the future. But if you don't protect your ethics, then you may gain a rebirth that, like, say, as an animal, wherein you enjoy those kinds of fruits of your previous generosity, but are unable to accumulate the kinds of causes for future possessions and wealth and necessities. And so the Buddha emphasized that we need to have ethical conduct. We need to have, at the very least, this kind of ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtues and engaging in the 10 virtues in order to be able to actually gain a good rebirth, such as we are able to enjoy that wealth and those kinds of causes that we have accumulated. And so if we don't, like we can see, for example, there are like dogs and other sorts of animal beings that have a great deal of wealth, but they're really unable to use that, or they enjoy that, but they don't create the causes for future kinds of good results. And so it's very important that we have this kind of foundation of ethical conduct. The Buddha repeatedly emphasized this, that although we need to engage in things like generosity, without ethics that ensures we take a good rebirth in the future, we can engage in things like generating bodhicitta, love and compassion, and meditating on emptiness and so forth, but we can't continue to improve or increase our qualities unless we gain a good rebirth. And the foundation of that is having ethical conduct, is having morality, whether that is the very basis of just the basic abandoning the 10 non-virtues and engaging in the 10 virtues, or whether one has taken the vows of a novice monk or nun, or a fully ordained monk or nun, or whether it is one's tantric vows and so forth. It is absolutely essential to keep the kind of ethics that we have taken up, because that is what ensures that we can have a good rebirth in the future, which is indispensable.
Oh yeah. Yunden sutum shindu nam pe na drebu nyeju cheba meban yu songdo. So tanda kewa sakba tuzu kangara chimba tangwa soba kombala soba kewa karasana. Chamba nyingji chanju sonle soba. Tezu Kanga de Sungora. Yende Chudim Shindu Nam Penase. Shana Tsoa Pambe Chudim Megachubu Chudim de Yaboji Suna. Ludin Kebarchin Shaji Togurwa. Top Suna. Ludin Tele Yanga. Lonju Chimbu in the Yang Chibaton ala Soba. Shanda Tele Laboya Chetura. Saba Conguina, Chaba Ninji Conguina, Kawachima Pasha Shani, Kone Kondo Peva de Ungora. Seta Chutim de Shinsa Tabure Sungora. E Soso Yende Kangatilpa Tabguine, Konda Kondo Penny, Machevse, Kawana Kawa Sanru, Lapcheru Cheru Dragore Sungora. Yende Chutim Shindu Nampe, Nan Jebu Nirchu Cheva Mebanjus. Soso Long Chair de Machevse, Kone Kondo Yontogure. Tokbe Yende in a Kokone Kondo Yandro to a Chungure Sungora. Yende Chudim Shindam, and Jebu Nichu Cheva Mebaja. Oh, Chimbetan Watachina, Chimbetan Jebu Kiwachimami, T. Comate, Yan Chimbetan, the Telehapa Chungera. Tiatene. Oh, Karsoda. Kiwachimata Mayamba, Chidako or Chimbetan to the Kanga, Sanjay Kovan Tobachedo, Ovi or the Yina Kiwachima, had me Kovan Tobache. Tendo ya Lonju Pumba Meba Church Troop Tungesha, or teacher trouble can teach him, Tele Labachia, Sada Mi Covantea, and a Karsoda. Oh, the watch out to Juba came out of Tungema Buyora, or Tele Lagbetene, Tarbe Kovan Tobachaco or Samsa. Oh, Tene Tarba de Rachibu, Kichedo Tarbatona, Marabrichera, Chendi Pama Chumbe. Simply share Tarbana and go to get Chegoresam. Oh, teach it to any Shimbatan la Sobato, Kone Kondo. Kiwatama Tamjete, Kone Kondo Pay Chedora. Lonju Chimbunjuans and Maimba, then Kebarchin Gichedo Lonju Joya. They tend to attach a Maimba Tarbe Chedo, Tamje Chimbe Koban Tobe Chedo, and then go in some. Oh, Tindretine, Sanji Rembi. Chimba children serve something like Sobala Chara. Oh, and Chamba Ninji Chanju Sembla Soba and then to Kone Kondo Pete, Kiwane, Kiwaya Chane, Sanji Koba, Tarshin Jibado, Sanji Kowa Rambuchi Chine, Tobar Chasam, Simjans, Seme, Simjan Tamjik, Troop Tungenge, Kaza, Roa, Sambu and Denda. Kimbe and then you got Tarshimbe Kansachil and Jura Chavi in some. Or teach you do. Then is Chilia, Tubacha, Ranga, the Ranga Samlota, the Yana Yando Comdichi in some. Coloset and the Samba shoes, yeah, or teach you.
So here, if we accumulate then the kind of virtuous actions based upon having this kind of field of morality. So the second half of this verse says that, and when qualities spring up in the field of morality, enjoyment of their fruits will become continuous. And so here it is the case that if we have this kind of foundation of ethical conduct, of morality, this is the field upon which we are able to further grow various kinds of qualities. So as a basis, if we engage in the practice of ethics, of abandoning the 10 non-virtues, of abandoning harming others, and engage in positive virtuous actions, then we're able to gain a good rebirth in the future, such that we can increase all other qualities, from generosity, continuing to engage in generosity, to things like love and compassion and bodhicitta, allowing ourselves to first put down those kind of imprints, and then over subsequent lives improve and develop and increase those more and more. And so whether it is our generosity, gaining another good basis where we can engage in generosity, or those higher sorts of attitudes like love and compassion and bodhicitta. We are striving in this way where ideally we're dedicating all of this toward Buddhahood, toward a state where we are most fully able to benefit other sentient beings. But in the sort of span of time between now and then, we need to gain those kinds of good rebirths wherein we are able to continue to improve and develop those kinds of qualities. And ethical conduct, morality, is the field upon which we are able to grow such qualities. So here, again, seeing that even if one takes a good rebirth in a future life, it's still within samsara, still not beyond the nature of suffering. One generates this kind of attitude of wanting to get to a definite kind of happiness that is beyond the suffering of samsara. But one's own liberation is not really sufficient, given the kind of kindness of all other sentient beings, that they have acted as our mothers and so forth. And so not just for our own benefit, but striving to gain that kind of state of Buddhahood wherein we are able to fully benefit others, we should think that I'm going to, over the sequence of many rebirths, in stages, continue to train and practice in the 6 perfections and love and compassion and bodhicitta, such that I get to a state where I'm able to benefit countless beings through having fully developed the qualities of love and knowledge and my ability and so forth. And so with that kind of attitude of thinking that the teachings that you are hearing are for that purpose and they're going toward that goal, please set your motivation for listening to these teachings.
Oh yeah. Danga to kazi chin sarde karshe du chenero. Kazi nga zu ngundu kapsu chi shemba. O ti ribene nga doda ani chamba ngombe shongda. O te juna songbare she. Ante long de changsa nalia duwa chanju sambe sa changsa nalia. Ro ribene nga butelia ani changu rese. Sodan le ne dai ribache. Sodan leji neji rikwasedo so rikwenan dyondu chongda ani shingle soje lela mini chanju seba namdi jukba da shukba la sokbe le zamba te chanju sembe shirabla lopsu yinsu songso o teletroni chi shena ti karishengi tuwaresena chanju semba sogo tendel tsendi ko chanju semba champagne lapchingi chawanje yordo ngarazu chanju semone ke matuna champagne samle kone titala loba yinaya chanju sembe lamda jesu tembe kewalan ruwe ordo chelen ruwe ore o di pechen ji shudaro tadi tromgi suru chirete o di pelki mare o di kalsore chilu chekdon kubja tangap chunga kunalia pelia ti kami wanji cheche kombatu kanga trabatu lega ku tinde chero o tede ngara lobjo chesage debu doa o debu loseli setraza o tina yore tina ngajo jinde chikba nga jinde chikba ngajo jinde nane peche yakshe minyani nge payu minyani nge ami senge chiware pepeche abu chiwa tene ko nge ngoshambachi chekdo kubja kechu kyagutu ba yimbe kongo ngoshambe kishichi kamjen chikba o chi dharamsala liya nyende lelepswa ta minyare ken karsare kunjo tenji sa ke kunjo tenji singe chi lepswa tene nge kola keje timba o nga jende chikba ne torbe sigre nga jende nane ne ami sigre mengde ami ami sigre rak ami de kariche so semba tene ko de drebung traba shamba kanga shamba mangcha de mege drebung sham mege sotra chisu sa cement sin karsare cement belasa cement hagura cement o cement so sa ke to or sa ke sotra chembo so to or chu tende che sigdo tinal ko legal do so sa ane traba mangbo chede keba mangbo chede modernality kawati mate ha ko yo mare chama chan se ma che tharang bu lam su tin de chi che ti che do tene ko te lam ga su de to o sa la do sa ko nyima che to ga do ba yin sig do ko no to ga tene to ga do ne ko te ga jami ge o me te pe ya te che re pe ya bu re se ko le ga pe shuk che bu che ge sig do ane jami ko te ga te che ko ya te ba sa ko ra yarge yatön sange samlu chep tombollem gemirese yartön barese tönga chigi varesa tene ko kola tu takera lega mache dadan digi marese lega chegurese ina shida shuk maja kala yabuteg midwa traba mambu shindwa ha ko dugese sa me mambu lega che kala yabu mate ne 시아가가 변에 작바를 차체 정도가 시기도아 아니 대체 결혼 동구도에서 동구도에서 시기사 아니 교시라 내가 제고 말해 개박해봤지 내가 맞아 대두고 말했던데 지세 근데 그걸 알고도서 땅아주 시주래서 그 갈라텍 모든 게 시오 통구여서 아주 시시받아 그 내가 그거래서 다들 내가 거나 내가 또 시멘지서나 미치소질 팬토 그래 삼기여서 미치소질 팬토 그래서 다 내가 제버데 나랑 던던데 뭐 제고에 삼제 밀 팬토 그래 다수이나 강바 잡고나 같이 팬토 그래 네가 삼네 내 삼을 때다네 내가 제마도 나 gemil 까자다 그게 미가가 독시테네 소부적지 시기와 마통 텐데 말해서 파케제 다 결혼한테 삼로다나 삽서적으로서는 거케제 랍사 민도사 다케제 마시 당가 섬다체 사이 시기도서 어디나 시라 지당하라도 내가 야부지 챙게네 삼삼부 삼신한테 꼴로 삼부신나 셴뱅이 자월 로든 로게 얼랍침부 로라 다 텐데 값이나 콘도마도 지게 텐데 삼로 코야 가보러와 다 콘도사게 단데 배 내가 마실 때는 통구도네 내가 제가 지그라 어떤데 마시지 텐데 마음부 총소한 별이야 뒤치그래 그냥 알아게 아샹지 샤샤 자월에 소려올래서 공부되게 잡아래 아니 제마코디 신뢰 마음부쳐구라 신뢰 마음부쳐 대때네 주주ren이를 줄줄도 고저 주주ren이를 소도 먹이 씹어 총소다 별이야 칼라사에 매버세 미마부 총식도 걔네 건조 dob제 말아서 배 깔리 총식도 네 천당공을 그 농배 현다야 다들 마신 되지래 저네 가서라 칼라니에 제서 요 말에 현다를 농산에 개요 말와 아니 미마부 총사 코랄에 배 깔리 총소식도 뒤제리 아니 제말 내가 지도지 않고 신뢰 증게 개체 배 신뢰 양야부체 콜라 땡아다네 약점바레시 라우도가 근데 그 제망아 년들링아 토가 용버래 자가 랩송아 근데 내가 결혼지 gem이 배동아 싫었다는 시기도 간데제레세 봐 근데 거란 시기도 어다 칼라생게데 사야세데 개침부 임바데 절루제동 급자 주주ren이 리송날 신송사 미간가 사야메 싱글로마데 봐 저체사 如果你把这东西呀、各些呀通街，这些结果从送上，这种呢，这你这么过来个制度上，现在背后是后路这样是个，不，他的等到这种呢，的没看了这个的，先把这种呢，先前去看了这个的上去，他看了先给的背。개 첨부를 매 칼라면에 빼려서 삼년에 초아돼서 강가 전송식도 거라 대체는 그다 매실 뱅그리 삼 자야고 존에서 빼려가 야고 자연식도 대체는 이게 교야 뜸버려서 빼야고를 세송식도 디레레마도 겸일 가야지 가야서 두부다데 대체를 이나 그 삼을 텐데 다들 내가 제ben식도 어디 빼줘지식이와 대송장 알아서 지다 내가 저게 상마대 지솔 팬벨 내가 좀 마도 요 말도 다 미세에 락전데스 텐데 지금은 가시 그로 말을 마도 새 지솔을 지지로 거라 지대도 녜멜로서 있는 거라도 아주 배도 왕에마에는 낭미도 저 강가 소소 차장 소소 지그래 신가 소소 답 내가 버주증이 신냐 요마다 쇼다 대저 소소에 둘러 소소 다 한국 소소에서 강가제도 그래. 현대 레고 말해. 다 등산들이 말아 강가 미치소 현대지체 신가답고 신가 장자답. 라와 둘러서 둘러 장자서도 정말 지기질이야. 니면 아주 낭미 지기질에 팬도 저되게 세워 준 거라. 뒤라부러지 다 정말 차대도 와. 다 지기질이야 팬도 저도. 내가 지금 시절이 계속서 내가 지금 저기 나고 chanju sembe nyamle che ta chanju sembe nyamle da che su temba che pe lap chen bu che yo de so ti she ya tan da yin ba ka se ti chi kyu na ni de gre ya ti chi gre ya
No. So here, picking up from where we had left off in the text, actually first I want to just do a little bit of review based upon the quotation from the Bodhisattva grounds, which here talks about the way in which bodhisattvas engage in the perfection of wisdom. And part of it is knowing, entering into and engaging with all objects of knowledge, which include the five sciences, sort of spiritual inner science, logic, grammar, medicine, and sort of mechanical and crafts. All of these various kinds of sort of knowledge and learning can be used in order to benefit others. And so bodhisattvas, those who are first training, sort of enter into those, and then it says those who have actually generated bodhicitta, like fully engage with that. And so here we're engaging in a way in which it is striving to benefit others. This is what bodhisattvas are doing through all of these various types of knowledge. And so too, even if we like have not yet fully generated bodhicitta, we should try to emulate that by doing, in whatever kind of work that we are doing so with this kind of attitude that we are doing it to benefit others. We're engaging in whatever kind of work or activity it may be in order to actually bring benefit to others. And I'll just give some examples of this in the way that, so in 1959, the Chinese took control of Tibet, and so there was at that time a fellow scholar at Drepung Losdaling. We called him Ami, and he was really well learned. He was very good in his studies and his book. And so a number of years later, in like 1989, someone from our same sort of monastic house, Kuncho Tenzin, arrived in Dharamsala, and I asked him about our old classmate Ami, and he told me that Ami had taken up work in this kind of mine where they're like making cement, basically mining stones and smashing them and making this into cement. And so a lot of monks, at the time, they weren't allowed to remain in the monasteries, and the Chinese would take them to really remote places and put them on road work or really hard labor, and the conditions were often really impoverished. I mean, they had very little food, they worked to the bone and so forth. But this particular old classmate, Ami, was really sort of praised and promoted, rose through the ranks with the Chinese, in that he did his work really well, this kind of work of mining and creating cement and so forth. And so I guess Kunjo Tenzin asked him, like, well, why are you doing that? Why don't you understand what the sort of conditions are like and what they subject people to? And so why are you doing this in a way to please the Chinese or to make them happy, to get their praise? And his response was that I'm not doing it for that, but I see that this is something that benefits other people. People need these kinds of cement, these bricks, these things to be able to live and sustain themselves. And so what I'm doing is I'm undertaking this work with that attitude in mind, that this is something that is beneficial to others. So whatever kind of, you could look at those sorts of those conditions of work and think like, this is awful. You would just want to get angry, or you would just want to rebel against that kind of system. But instead, whatever kind of work we do with that good motivation that's really thinking about benefiting others, that becomes virtuous. And so too, I have an uncle who he used to be a monk and then was forced into doing like field work in Tibet. And later, when he came to India, I was able to meet with him, and same thing with him. There was a time in like 1962, 1963 when there was a great famine in Tibet. People suffered horribly. You could not go buy food from anywhere. There was no way to get what you needed. I mean, people were like trying to like smash up leaves and eat them, or leather, or things that were totally rotten. I mean, it was just an awful experience. And so later, when he was forced by the Chinese to do farm work, he did it in this way where he was really focused. He had that feeling in mind of like, I'm doing something that is giving food to people, that is feeding and sustaining people. And that kind of attitude of wanting to benefit them made him engage in this work in a way where he's really productive. Again, the Chinese are looking at him and sort of praising him and promoting him and so forth, but that's not why he was doing it that way. It's recognizing that it's to benefit other people. And so recognizing that now in our society, I mean, previously in Tibet, families could live very much as sort of independent entities. They raised their own animals and raised their own crops. They made their own food and so forth in this sort of unit. They didn't need necessarily a lot of things from outside people. But our life is not like that anymore. Whatever kind of things that we get are normally from the hands of others. And so whatever sort of work you engage in, if you do so with this kind of beneficial attitude of thinking that I want to do this to benefit others, that way it can become virtuous and our actions can become such that they are emulating the kind of practice of bodhisattvas.
Oh yeah. Don't do the ma ramati loshana. Did the Geshe Yeshi all chigi, right? Oh, that to what they did I said in Ba, Nazuti, Gelato core, new last about on Rosan. That did I attention, never join him, Besse. Oh, round to Truba Mary, round when a Truba Mary. That is Tongbani Samlutana. One a Tranechi figure did he say, dance and beverage, Mambuji Sone, Chilega Chitevatilani, Mingji Tache, teach the Tinrich and Truverici Redoa. The Ramone Truba Mania, Koya, Chawachi Tongachi, Yore, Segura, Lega Chingachi, Yore. Ramone Truba Ram, Suji Chingachi, Yomare. Kura Mainga de Kashe Soche, and it's the Lega Chawachingachi to Guarda. Ya chashe to the re ya chache de re chega dona ya loga ko ya chashe mambul tegure to oh ti de teda na ya se teda tenji debre jo imbe chashe tamje ro ala ya ngeba chan de se chawa che thumge chi sha gu yor to ti ke chim chi sha gu yor takje ge tawa tamje range ngange dogban jo ata takje su do takba su Meba chile yoba trota sune te takta sigra. Rawa du truba meba yoba trota pasero. Oh, tene takbar tawa sero. Mitabala takbar tawa sero. Te meba chile yoba trota angege logdo tezula takta sigra. Chin cheda sudu yoba te meba tasuna. Ngobe nezule yoba chi meba patagu yuna ane cheda roa. Kyo ngachi yo mare sero. Legend of Marisa Roa, oh, Tindetagana. Tani Cheta Sigurdo. Taxi, Tawa Tamja Nangi, Dogbar Juatase. Takbarta, Meba, Yoba, Tagamari, Yobate Meba, Sugmar, Korango, Koraneta, Kare, and Atineshi, some Locortum Geshe. Taxi, Tangita, Treva, Usigdoa, Koran Kare, Yobate, Yova, Trodo, members, Tindet, Tawashikuara. Taxi get Tatamjeda Kasi Ranking Hangin Dogbar Juata. Kyo Namji Kyo Shenle Rani Choda Member Jurbata Rani Chawa Sange Kangi Chebabur Jurba Namla Anika Chebabur Jurba Namla se Tushan Kasare. Oh yeah, Chebabur Jurba Namla Rawadu Jurba Rawa. Rawadu Truba Rangshin, Rawadu Truba, Rangshin Truba, Truba somebody, Kyo Tedala, Sendida, Tenji Kube Sonam, Joata. Kyo Kanshiki, Rangi Tedara Chongmeda, Chebabu Jurba Namla, Tendre, Tene Truba, Chu, Taranam, Chidar Sambata, Teda Chesun Truba, Landur Chawar, Tusum Bebale, Sendida, Tenji. Pendetelato Dubar Jurua Yimbese. Oh, this is your Tatun Daka Soda. Oh, how do it? Yeah. Awesome. Bien sera. Ora, ya dirwa. Oh. Oh, takje to tin so to jo. Jo ta. Shen kyo nam kyo shen le rani member da cho de jo de se yo da. Se ke jere. Geshe Geshe Ran Pena Lega member Chiguna Rangi Pama de Chig Lega Kari Chiguna Gavadova to Mambu Yordo Lega Karina Co Lega Soso Pai de Lega Karina Tiran Chede Corese Timado Shanda Mejitoa and it Rick Tolu Mambu Chigdoa, remember this, Koran member Yinashar. Told Rick Toy in some number Shagdoa. I Rick Tombo in Achi in some good. Nama to Zogako Betanga do use some legatima to Chijumes and Lega Pai Legatira and Tira Chago use some or Tendridua. The Koran Rigma to Patunju that not do Koran Vacum de when the Koran get Kelly or Chase Degdoa, which is a team Monday Resiora. Cotenji Dever Joara, Soso Lega Carizina Shanda Shenda Shanchi Mandinichi Shanda Shanchiara. Soso Michi by in some Soso di shower, but the Soso Rangshinki Truba membership in but around the Trube, Yagatozanga, around the Trube, one just chimbu in some good. Around the Trube, one just chimbu in some Chimane, in one the Mab Charge and Colossigua. So Soso Tenji Dever Joa in some Michi so some Yasha Shabachi in some. Teaching Delvachi in some nine lecture Yabuchira. Koyiga to the ones that can go Koran Yevaka to Tangara, Rawa in some Mount Bola tended to do with Mevacha, the Samlumatana, Lega Golo Mamuche Shagdoa. Or Tessiora, say Rancho to Juba in some round the Truba Chok the Trubachi Yomare, to do with me Yasha and Tendayugra. Members around the Truba members Yomar, member the Yaga Regio Yore, Yaga to a Regio Yora. So two days, so Chawachita in a lega caricia and a car in a teacher, so member more around the trouble resto, attended some of the Madiresa. In the Kashak tea Yungudua, Church in a dependo yore. Duba is a caricuna, or the Kunjo Malik Jagaina, Malik Marzias, Malik said Taku de Sigora, Kangusong Gangi Taku de Sigora. Tim Marze, Koran Devar, Dati Gresigua, Church and Eddie Pangado, Koran Soto, Narato Legum Dede, Leg Dever, Degree Sana Sheko, Samba Shasa Dua, Church and Madirati. Shanda Sosha Maro, Soso Yaga, Dugachede, Soso Kujin Samasanda, Soso Chetan Demandida, teacher Negormato, Shanda Sosha Rede Omardo. Oh, Tejo Samuti Kitchesiva. Oh, Castle. Shan Joe Namji Rani Shale, Rani Choda, member Cubata, Rani Chawa Samba, Chawa, Sange Kangi Chibabu Juba Namla, Lega Yabuchigina to Buchigina Dara, Chibabu Juba Namla. June? Chibabu Juba Namla Redwa. Nisha Tadar. Chibabu Juba Namlas, Rawanto Truba, Ranshinki Truba Sambandis, Joe Tedala, Sendida Tengi, Quibet Sonam Chunshis, Social Kamabu Yungo, Resigara. Joe Kanshi Ki Rani Tedar Juba Chod Juba, the member Juba Sura, Chongmeda Lake and the Kangi Chibabu Juba Damla. Then they turn a Trube, Chu Taranam Sambatas, oh, Today you had the tension de Barjoaranga, Judy Chebujam Lega, Chebujamako, Juare Durdo, Terra Chekova, Rawan to Truba, Terra Chekova, Tabaka de Omardo, some Jurata Yore, some social carcina, Tende some Cogo, the Kurgumedu Sigora, teach any Kangu Sigora. Choda member, the Lake Kangi Chebabu Juba Namla, Tende Turner Drube, Chutaramna Sambatase. Teta Cheso Timba, the Tension Deborah, Courage and Kariangur, Courage and Karmasa, Soso Samlutaj, Jurata, Inasigorno, Teta Cheso Timba, Lancha Kari, Torcha Kari, Pa, Doleche and Esigora. Need two so beba less Bezuchevena, said that Tenji Pende Telado, Drubar Jua in Besse, Sindi Tiduli Netare, Kawachima Penja, Tenji Tidu in the Sosoge, Chawa Sambo Kariche, Chukan, but Session, Sosoge. Rawach and a park sora. Rangun the Truba Mana, Shandagachi, Chiata Rangshinji Truba in Samsa, Tara check with Samsa, Mishibe, Yandem average that Tanga, Tagara, Meshing in some Tatani, Humardo, Onga, Juatani, Juan to Juar and Mizu Chevanashi Chanaga, Yungursam tended to go to Samna, Koya Gendra Yordo. Jesu to Belladur, Janel and Beba, let's say that thank you, Teladon Dover Joayebe, Tembe, Tujanamla, Rani Teor Cheba, Tunga or Chebe, Ngobusang Dinamse. Oh, there's a Gangaya, Cheba Bushashi, Combe, Chimenivas. Today, Cheba Bond of Shandachi, Shandachi, Wang Chen, so you go to Samlute, Meva Soyatundala, so Raleba, so Lega Chetan, Mabura Leg, you would tell Guetundara, so toy, but Combe Chimenula. What did the Chilabna?
No, no. So here then picking up in the text where we had left off, and I believe this is on page 14 in this English version, and here beginning with the sentence where it says, the mere fact that things arise dependently induces certain knowledge that all actions and their agents can function though they lack intrinsic existence. So here, through understanding the way that things properly understanding the way that things are dependently arisen, that they are empty of some kind of intrinsic existence or autonomous existence, that even though they are merely sort of a name, when we have phenomena, we can only say that they are mere designations based upon designating a particular name on a collection. In dependence upon that, we can say that all things can function, all actions and their agents can function, even in that lack of intrinsic existence. So that knowledge that things are empty of intrinsic existence overcomes the eternalistic view that things have intrinsic existence. And the knowledge that things are able to perform functions despite lacking intrinsic existence automatically destroys the nihilistic view that things lacking intrinsic existence cannot perform functions. So this proper kind of understanding eliminates both of those sorts of extreme views, an extreme view of permanence, wherein we're grasping, sort of exaggerating the existence of something that does not actually exist, like for impermanent things, thinking that they are permanent and so forth. Or on the other hand, you can have the kind of knowledge that is nihilistic, where it is denying things that actually do exist, sort of exaggerating or projecting a non-existence onto things that do exist. So you can have the kind of view of no past and future lives, no karma, cause and effect, and so forth. So a proper understanding of this lack of lack of inherent existence, but still having functionality, is that kind of middle way that is free from that kind of extreme. And so here, continuing, it says, furthermore, those who believe that they are inherently superior or inherently inferior to others, who are attached to an intrinsic notion of themselves as high status or low status, experience trouble in this life and will experience trouble in lives to come. So here, in terms of like, especially in India, it used to be that the sort of son or a child of a family would naturally follow after the kind of profession of the father, or you have a very sort of, they pay close attention to the ideas of caste and rank and where you fall. And so if you think of that sort of high or low status, that is intrinsically existent, that you have a sort of intrinsic idea of oneself as being either of a high status or a low status, this will lead to trouble in this life and trouble in future lives as well. But those who think that their high status or low status or their particular occupation is a dependent arising, either in a coarse or subtle sense, and in accordance with this understanding, make timely effort to adopt what needs to be done and cast aside what needs to be abandoned, will easily achieve happiness and well-being in this and future lives. So here, this kind of attitude wherein we recognize that things are only sort of dependent, that they are designated independence upon one another, exist in a kind of interdependent origination, as opposed to having the kind of autonomy or intrinsic existence that we normally sort of have. If we have that kind of attitude, there's no belief that we can change, that we can improve, that we can sort of adjust anything. If you have that kind of intrinsic nature, either as high status or low status or whatever it may be. But if instead one recognizes that these things are dependent arisings, even if it's in a more coarse kind of sense, this means that one sees that things happen only due to the effort of one's own actions. So you have to make an effort. The happiness of this life and future lives is dependent upon one's own effort. It isn't sort of dependent upon, as it continues here. Thus the teacher explained to his disciples that the mind of a supreme deity could not create the helpful or harmful things that are the basis for our joy or sorrow. So here, again, it's dependent upon our own creation of causes and conditions that we can improve, that we can change. It is up to us. We are sort of the principal one here. It is not due to the sort of mind of the supreme deity or something that help or harm comes to us, but rather we are the basis of our own joy and sorrow.
Oh yeah. Tene kyu meba danse. Tate te kyagage tupta shanda mambu yordo. Sanje pebe kaptela o ti kapge sonza shanda so ya lingo yordo. Tende sambana sheti mare sero. Kyu meba le chwa se kyangben ba to na te kanga kyu meba le tene chwa re sigirdo. Jiden kam koran chwa de kyu ge yo mare se. Koran rang shi ge chwa re se. Kyu meba ma wa se. Mo tene kyo nga chi da to yo mare se. Zambulin koran de chwa de kyu ge yo mare koran rang shi ge chwa re se ti she yo ra. Kyu meba ta sa. So ye kyu rang shi de se ya chi so chang jen ba to na. 소외 주 지소세 샤그라 담부 지소세 대 주그래 창매 싸워대 지소 되게는 현다 강가 림지치 그래 지소 고랑을 교요 말이야 지소세 시와래 셔라 되게 다 니바 선보시바 시전 이슈장아 수장가 자셔래 달라고 말해 근데서 지소 되게 상만 지된데 네, 가서 런처 서버에서 삼아 서버에 쓰거라. 지소 고란을 교회를 봐서 안 텔레 교회 말해서 그래. 지소 고란데 규칙 보인 바마도 kon 레브 말해서 그래. 콜 교회 말해서. 콜 교샤는 가르쳐 지고래. 텔레 교신의 교통미체 당분 고추서를 주고도 텔레를 가게 매버시. 진짜 거기 삼겨야 돼. 남바chen 된데 말도. 교교야를 교를 토박해요 말에 공내 통매라 담보 되네 저 뒤달요 말에 세지요 말에 통만 매번에 자꾸 용되요 말도 지금 담보 가게 매버실래니 돕자고자질 시셔 인지된 감투치야지요 말에 교단 게 매네 용해요 말에 어디서 그거라 랑시 조여 랑시 지소서라 딱배 들라 속배서 야 줍다 마 가셔게 뒤에 제바 보이시기도 뒤에 딱 말해서 그래 나머지는 뒤에 매다 버려 뒤에 드부게 요라 전도를 답시나 그 뒤에 뒤로 차장 유로 저기 깨고라 뒤에 드부게 요다 뒤에 딱 박해네 참마탐제 뒤에 요한 게 좋아래 니마샤데 뒤에 요한 게 좋아래 뒤에 딱 버려 서로에데 뒤에 요한 게 좋아래 이 구에데 뒤요하지 니세데 뒤요 강가 뒤제바 뭐 켈링기도 와 뒤야 딱봐 어떤데 켈링 거라 뒤에 말해서 딱배 뒤라 속배서 다야 가셔기 뒤에 참미세 뒤에 켈링기도 어디 봐도 제일 남나
So here, then, there are those, again, that think the teacher explained to his disciples that the mind of a supreme deity could not create the helpful or harmful things that are the basis of our joy or sorrow. So he also taught that things are not produced causelessly from a principal nature or a permanent entity called time. So here, there are those in the context of the Indian kind of tenet holders at the time of the Buddha who asserted that things arise causelessly. The sort of hedonists or the Charvakas who would say that there is no kind of cause to the universe or to anything. These are just things just kind of come about. And they would assert that there are no past and future lives, there's no karma. It's just sort of the nature of things, but we can't point to any specific cause. They would identify things as being causelessly, but yet that kind of is the nature of things to come into existence. So here, that's the sort of idea of things as being causeless. And then there are those that would assert that there's sort of a principal nature as being the way that things come about. And so the Samkhyas, generally speaking, they accepted this idea of like a principle or sort of a substrate of all of the universe, something that acts as a cause, that is not itself caused, but is kind of the thing that creates, that causes all of the environment and the beings within it, and so forth. So their assertion that there is no cause for such a sort of principal nature is that if you had to have a cause for that, then you would have to have a cause that caused that thing, and so forth, and would go on endlessly. Now, Buddhists would say that it's not possible for something to just suddenly, abruptly, with no cause, come about. Where does that principal sort of source, that principal nature come from? One would need to answer that. But here, according to the Samkhyas, this, along with the sort of 25 other categories of phenomena, this is the cause for everything, but it does not itself have a cause. Now, there are others who would assert that there is something like a permanent entity called time, that is what produces various phenomena. So here, according to Buddhists, time is impermanent. It is something that acts as a cause. Like when we plant crops, the thing that leads to their ripening is the passage of time, and time thus acts as a cause. It's not considered to be something permanent. But here, other particular tenet schools would assert that time is permanent and yet acts as a cause for all the various things that come about. So in this way, there are sort of assertions that the Buddha is teaching against, for example, that things are arisen causelessly or from a principal nature or from a permanent entity called time.
Oh yeah, Thabkhe dula sok paase. Ta so se de shenda yo choda. Pena tuthe nambwa tongbe na le tuthe chame. Takpa mangbo yo re te so dune ne zambulin de su samje chobure sing tende yo do. Tuthe chame nambwa ke tu chamo mangbo tongbe na che te so kale kale ru che che ne zambulin chobe ni de sig yo ra. Ta ina de tu ka se tuthe takpa chame se de kale mara. Today chameba. Ye kanga sisamenke. Today chame chortane. Ene tagba te anjura menge kadu na khote denge. Kozu ruru ro chesuna ne nyamde juro cheche an tramende re yoba. Today khora tagba himba tinde kelenge odno. Today tagbe namge tongsana yebe today chame kende tozo kanga ruru chene trubare sede. Oda Today so well attended to go today chameda takba yenge today kelenge oma nambachene today so well attended to go ordo loss of bes cheba yembe rarang is loss of cheba marichera and the cares rarang timu maybe good ten attending jungure sora rarang timu rarang tumbeju rarang tumbeju 메도르시 깨고이나 고란도 팀베 주시오라 메도 선지 용거래 제다 팀베네 사슈 멜롱도 거르도 주 레부카리나 고란도 주단 켄셔레 주스나 녜네 주도르시고라 고라 레드로야 주시고래 내가 주 사변을 했다 마타베게 내시오르반 두시오라테 녜네데로와 다딜에 추다 저다 셔다 저저 초고라 되게 유로다 저저 손에 어떠죠? 렌즈지 gen서라. 년에게 교대코 Drebude Ninde de Restuet and the Koro Wachiordo. Sabeda Chudan Luda Trashes or Tozusu. Kudan Kens, Kudan Kenshi, Kudan Yelen Kuche, Kens do Henji chicken to Siora. Or Chidan Kusudu, Kudan Kenigale Kochawara. Kucheveres and Kudan Kens do it, the Kagadoda. Kujinle te Rarang Tumu Maimbe. Kujinle Tene. Koran Keji Nelen Kudan Henji chicken so volatene. Dedan Drelne any Jongo Resiguara. Tenjen Debara. Jua Tempandinese. Koran Takbachi, Kudipiga de, and Tarzan Debuke and say Omare. Tina Tension Delnike Kigmarwa. Koran Yelling, Juchi, Lenji, get to Tezu, Jura, Cheche, and Titan Delnico, Yelling, Yende also, Jurson, Tension Delne Ungora. Jutawashi, two Tawashi, and a cold cane, Duke Delnike Kikumara, Takwal Chawashi, and you don't drag Omara. Koran Piga Yeva, some Jiki, Shindo the white case on such a Tamir Shindo Kekura. Shindo Gigi, you Koran Piga Tawashi Dash and Divina. Didn't do you, Mare? Kutawada, you never like Kena, you chili Kena, you Tamjeli Kekura. You chili Kemasuna, you Tamjeli Ke Yomare. Too many give you Nessiorda. Kutawal didn't give you Nessiorda. Manigana Kasakal Kekuriana, Chile Majin Kasakal Major Chavra. So today, Omaresora, Koran Yelling, Kudan Henji chicken, Kudis Hane, Tidan Delne, and Kewore, Tenjin Delvar Joan Setira, Kudin Gagwa than Yelling, Kudin Gagwa than Yamdone, Yendeti Kikiora. Tenjin Debra Joan Tempandines, or Novo Samatam, Tenjin Debra Joan Ese, Mitimbeku, to the Kigmares on a Tigisora. Novo Namjo Junior choose all a Chingilodo Shimbasenes. Oh, today's Tenjin Debar Joa Sombadige. Novo Namlan Junior Chu Roa. Two Tapaka Chever Sarah about that, and today Chame Tapaka Chever Sarah of Taniana, Chiso Chever Sarah, and Yana Juday Chebabu Chever Sarah of that, today Dobamabu or too many Kiyu Sarah. To do Captelia, Javalia, to them Medra Mabuyos and Kotoyachi Linkuora, Tende Mares and Tende Race or Tisha or no. No one of your junior choose or like Chingilodo Shemba, Senes, Tenjin Debra Junior to the Abuchi Shentona, and then Nobu Konzo Juegi, to the Chingilo, and the Kuma Bush Tanda to the Shanda Shangi Sheva Tozupa, Sendo with the Esora. Don't like it, don't want to Drebuto to Kutan King, condition in Kigore, Tiawaha Koto with a self shagres and Gora. She don't never in your sour chase. Rangi Mendube to Mesewata, then she tension Debarjo and Nesutin. Nugget tension Debarjo, Kansa, duty to attend the Yala Junior Sobatazul, Nugget tension Debarjo Sigra. Chi tension Deborah Johnson, Zambuli, the Tishin Nasala Soba, the Zokanga Zola, Chi tension Deborah Johnson, Nugget tension Deborah Johnson, and Nugget, and a Kansaga Tidunia, Tome Maruban, you would tend to Yala Junior shadow, or to do some Sigara. Tungesewada, Tungesewa and Derbada, Tewa, Kanshi Trubas, Tatunda, Chi tension in a Kudan Timu Maiba, social Tenikure. And Nage Tenism Jay in a Rarasus, Tawada Tunge de Yoya, so desigordo. Tunge Sewa, the Tewa, Kanshi Trubala Rani, so in Bessa. Kansa Koran so desora. Range Kevada, the Velas about Tenin Drebuti to Yungora. Kevelas about Tenin Drebuti Yungore, Mikevelas about Tenin Drebutunga Yungora. Then the Rani Sore. Rani so members of Shandas again, Radi Karatewa Tungesugun, and Nazun Devache Magera, Marazun Dagwa Surache, Dagwas now Kujara, Salabasu, Pumbatan Shida Soya, Kamba Soya, Saba Soya, Dagwa Yora, Dagwa de Mission da Caruso Sura, and Dagwa Korache Yomara, this on the Chadore. They can't never you get his Chaku or Tada. Some jet somewhat of the Susu Chene, Chigu Yongeche. 마음에 대도 전달을 소소 깔래 겸네 준비 통야 여바시 진짜 삼로 거야 전달이야 진짜 말에 시기와라 그바 대체도라 마도신 건조파 가야치부 전달을 말해서 라기요 말아 등고에 내중원에 대체를 진짜 삼로 단에 껴용 그래서 진짜 말에 내려서 대성 시기어도 다보랑이 게다게 셰도 탑강실한 배고바남 야 셰버셰베 탑게기 자발라나면 어상예게 땡진 데버 좋아래 소야돼 근데 치iten데 나다 나게 때네 나다 소소 대화 동에 가래이나 대 중직이 교강이 버데 치지 말로 왕원에 전에 거 내실 강이 버데 세버셰시도 땡진 데버 좋아 송바래 세거라 뭐 되질라나
So here, then, it is the case, again, that the Buddha teaches, rather, he said, they arise dependently, based upon their respective causes and conditions. And so here, things arise in this kind of dependently originated way. It is, for example, when it comes to the external kind of reality we live in, due to the coming together of various particles that we have sort of coarse forms and so forth. And here, one needs to, again, understand that when we talk about sort of atoms or particles, these schools accept that there are some kind of atoms, but when you search for them, there's not some sort of permanent kind of partless particle that are the building blocks, these kind of permanent entities or permanent partless particles that act as the kind of building blocks where there's no sort of directionality to those various particles. It's not that kind of situation. Here, when we say that various Buddhist schools accept the sort of coming together of various atoms or particles, we should recognize that even those who don't accept the existence of partless particles may use that kind of language. So here, when it comes to the way that things are dependently originated, they arise dependently based upon their respective causes and conditions. So here, when it comes to the way that things arise through causes and conditions, it has to be particularly a concordant cause. And here, when we use the two terms cause and conditions, the cause is really referring to the substantial cause. And again, that's a technical term, so don't get caught on that sort of substance thing. But this nyerlengyigu, which is the substantial cause, like, for example, if we have a seed of barley, like that particular grain, and we're using that to plant in order to get a sprout, that acts as the substantial cause. And all of the kind of things like the water and the soil and the fertilizer and the heat, those are all the kind of coordinating conditions. So there are times when we use the word cause in a more general way to refer to both of those, but when you hear here together, cause and condition, it's really referring to the substantial cause and those kind of coordinating conditions. And so something that is permanent can't act as a cause. Again, this teaching eliminates any misconception of how things are produced and illuminates how they actually are. And so when it comes to, again, if there was some sort of permanent thing, that couldn't act as a cause. It can't connect with any sort of result or have any kind of efficacy. If that permanent cause is always there, like say for a tree, then that tree would always have to be produced in all places at all times. Or if it's causeless, you still run into the same kind of issues. It's just it doesn't depend upon a cause. So what is to prevent it from arising in all places at all times? So to arise causelessly or to arise from a permanent kind of a cause, this is counteracted by the Buddha's proper explanation of dependent arising, and it is the way that we are able to eliminate misconception of how things are produced, like say from a permanent kind of a cause or produced causelessly, and instead understand how they actually are, how it is that it is based upon that substantial cause, the sort of stopping of that leads to the arising of a particular result, kind of in the way of a scale, that we generate particular results. And again, those kinds of causes have to be the proper sort of concordant causes. It's not just like any cause can generate any result. And so this, again, it responds to many different wrong assumptions assertions that are held by various Indian tenet schools at the time. But it's, again, not just to eliminate their misconceptions or to argue with others, but rather, as it explains here, this kind of explanation of how it is that things arise. So here it says, accordingly, it is principally up to yourself to clear away the suffering that you do not want and to achieve the happiness that you do want. The teaching of dependent arising is the Buddha's unsurpassed act of skillful means to help you understand what you should do in order to eliminate suffering and to achieve happiness. So the Buddha is not just teaching this in order to eliminate the sort of wrong conceptions of other systems, not just teaching us the sort of inner dependent origination that relates to particularly the 12 links of how ignorance gives rise to karmic formations and consciousness and so forth, but also external dependent origination, the sort of arising of the environment and so forth. This isn't taught just in a way of like refuting others' conceptions or assertions, but rather because this is the way in which we are able to determine our own kind of happiness and suffering. It's not as though someone else is sort of in control of this or forming, creating what we are going to experience, but rather we are the principal, the primary one who has control over our own suffering and happiness. So again, this is taught not just for the sake of refuting others, but really in order that we might have the proper kind of methods to eliminate our suffering and achieve our happiness.
Oh yeah. Oh, 당연 주디 가서 땡중게 출래 따와 주주세 되셔서라. 디다 가서라. 땡중게 출래 따와 주주세. 교단 깨라 땡진 레버를 주에 대차네. 비 삼루다네. 아니 따와도 저거래서 와라. 따와서야 돼. 따와도 망볼 거쳐오래. 뭐 내술 거쳐오래도. 근데 메다가 저절에 따와서 따와 터둘래. 동반이 따와래 거쳐오래. 디체 탐제 메다가 서제 탐제 동나와서 최 탐제 다음에 봐. 양헬인데 봐 시와서 다 전다 뭐 내주 오늘 간대 임바티 됐어요도. 어디 그다게 라텐제 제부 중다 텔레텐 하고도 그래서 그거도. 어디 간대르스나. 주 간대 처네 제부 간대 연구도. 제부 메다 영화데 주 간대 때는 연구도. 주단 제부 저와데 야보지 신소나. 아니 제부 때와다 동에 있나다 치 니치 비게 거기 있나다 계속 간가 주들한테는 데 연구도 주들한테는 데 연구를 삼제 아주 내주 신에도 들렸더니 신기하라. 군데데 소소나 제부데데 연구 데데 손데데 연구를세 보여도 들렸더니 신기하라. 남바상제 보이나 따라 줄을 제부 주 데데 소소나 제부 데단 데 종시 버레세 종롱아레세 종롱아 보스그라 종예바 보토 말에 남바잖아 그다 께 초발할 때네 제부 종예바데 보여 말에 예바도 종그레 스타체 정말 신가를 지도 내사 추르 저시 참마잖아 다던도 야보시지 기그레세 예바도 기그레세 단도 타체 쳐 말아 등이 바로 바르셰 종세그라 출로 종세그레 테바탄세그레 야 바로 사빈 차로 그때 바세그레 그래서 종으로 알아 다 야보시다 대체해서 던도 야보다고 신뢰 야보체 제부 던도 야보 연구래서 종으로도 보여라 선 줄에 때는 제부 망쳐와데 줄에 삼을다는 제부 종으로도 보고도 종으로 보여서 아니 종으로도 보여라 어다 된데 전에 데 연구래 된데 데 연구래서 교대를 삼을다 아니 제부 가르가르 용아티라 치ing어볼래 다가래 난게 소소 뒤둘래 다가래도 대wan 중에 교 가르가르도 동해 중에 교 가르가르도 교를 삼을다 교대 참고 삼 나는 교를 삼을 마다 제가 지지 거에 마마 거에서 뭐람 저치는 영향이 요 말아 교대 쪽으로라 교대 소소 쪽으로도 교대들의 샤대들의 무슨 telitani an jebu de jebu de de kedo te ke gyo kar ngon de rogo dose jebu chane gyo poya chi wara jebu koran 도인다부터 지들에 통해서 어딘데 여기 가르쳐 줘야 줄 삼을다니 내주 보토도 자 공의 내주디 가를 땐 보스네 주단께 주일내가 쳐다 제부께다 텔 삼을다니 내주 원에 보토라 뒤제 메다바이 바데다 남베 타와셔네 셔네 뒤제 메다바이 바데티 보토라 기지개지긴 유로체 마도 용해요 말에 주 코란데 기지개지긴 유아체 그래 제부데 기지개지긴 유아체 그래 텔 딱외 주다 유아 메싱게 다스 대션 등게시 요 말에 주지요 말도 미다바이나다 동해와이네 다가와 나라서 동해 중에 주가라 공도당아 제당아 진다 근데체 대왕게 자왕에 밤망부체 대왕게 동해 좋아 아주 초치된 무슨 동교하라 다나시 야부체네 신들레 소소 야부체 로종 야부체 주주 야부체네 마음반의 야부 용한테 무슨도 또도 제가 가서래 내 준대게 저와데 초치된 무슨 게 조금 있어라 알아서 내가 상부체는 대부 상부야 내가 녀버체는 대부 녀버야 시 요르도 통준용 요리 레스도 통해 주체 코랄이야 자와 상계고 하게라 상계 용아치 또 해도가 어디인데 메다바다 동해와 동해 쪽에 주디 가서 가다 가르진체 철당께 철당고 온게 레사나 네 동해 쪽에 주리 사래 로 교코란디 야부시 마사사 되게 동해 제시마도 때와 때 붙이 어떻게요 말도 메다바 동해 동아시도 다 랑원에 주베 동아 다 다음에 어때서 뒤보 도도 그단계 마부 처벌할 때는 제부도 로버도 주고 와라 주진 서버 코란티네 태영고 말아 또 망샤 외부 마저 망샤게 누구도 지는 누구 코란한테 달래께서 코란 주도서 요는 코란 소통용 거를 시행하라 달래께 와서 샹래께 와서 라와도 주베 주샹래 때는 라와도 주베 제부샹께 용 거를 써라 근데 가셔 규밀에 껴다 달도서 딱왜 줄래 때는 껴와서 주매발 때는 끼기를 써라 그래서 가가 미다동에 또 다음에 써봐라 아니 치고 보고 중당 중로 써봐 마음발 가려 그래 단단 가지고 수지치기도 와 다단단 데레 쟤는 마음발이야 아니 차와처럼 저기를 써야 지저스탄다 하고 되도 어디에 그 치는 주긴 직대이나 주사단을 때는 레부 가르쳐 하고 또 그래 단대 연단을 때는 차와처럼 로텔에 주군도 도와도 보고도 어디 나시 세상 뭐 때제 레버를 좋아하되 뭐 내중원에 돼 제고는 교단 깨다 또 저거 자와치단 될 때는 제고요래 통망 웃음내 시수수도 웃음 그 통해도 시체네 야대고 그러면도 좀 개선을 시체 요래 뭐 요랬는데 저는 뭐 내중원에 대하고 요 말에 어때서죠 tension 레버를 좋아서 사제 소야 돼배 가서 따와 설거네 대토네 설거네 쓰여도 되나시 대지 텐션을 관대 내 땅에 자와타다 쨘버치 소도 tension 레버를 좋아 되게 딱배 죽한가 용해요 말에 주면에 제부께요 말에 좋아 전에 가서 제바부 생애지기 너버전에 용해요 말에 어쩌서 상마대 그 텐션 레버를 좋아 주단 깨서서 깨용 그러다 하시되 주단 깨된 유러션 제부디 깨고르다 하시되 딱배 주다 아니 샤다저 사물단에 네 고거를 네 고거 말해서 텐데션에 용해 매가대 하고도 telledene hakoto gurdo tesoza tiji tenjo rikbande ne tange jawata da cheverchese ganzu takwan jenge ore da takwan jenge jwa meber sange tengere teso medawa imbate telledene hakoto gurdo jura yo baje ngobo kangan jura kyu hange kon jura du yo baje samtangura ngaraso samle nale aso takwe samjude mambo yongo ardo manjur che teri yebde sanyi tege sanyi yebde 네네 요 삼삼 삼기도 가자 어떻게 말해 그 패키지까지 좋아지게 와라 뒤치대서 그 라와도 들어봐서 요 말은 아주 배셔나 남들 겁성도 뒤치를 메달에 동해서도 주다 깨기야 깨지까지 깨온데 그 메달까지 마도 딱 봐서 영향 걸어요 말도 뒤치 메달에 동해서 동해와 인데 랭여지 샤와지 메다바이 미치스고라 녀모시 대원게 레사네 메다바레 동해와 인데 다다 예배서기 때 소소소보르지나 다다 개와 개바 나와 치와 관계 깨지고도 동해 시리데도 뭐지 주 랭여 샤와지 코까지 대로에 까지 대로에 그도 나로에 띠디 네메 주 녀모달레 사바티 데부데 마도 지하게 메도 어떻게 되고 메다바인데 랭여지 샤와지 because 기시 메달레 동해와인데 랭여지 샤와지 메다바인 베시스고라 동해와이나 샘교하게 베시레 소소 풍부가를 써봐 동해와지도 삼롱원에 따는 소소 샘교하게 베시레 되어라 미상화세고라 지단 류 미상화세로 tenderle 구조한데 샘교하게 베시레 미상화세고라 샘교하게 베시실이야 소보다 그래서 동해장 깨가 나질러서 동해강 같은 연구도 소보 만드는 연구 알아 텔레야 나에서 시작에 신자지에 그 말했으고라 지금 메달레 동해레네 다음에 송사 나야다 나에서 저 셔버 진지 지야식 그 누구에서고라 샘교하기를 삼로 동네 당기는 소 교하기를 실어지려도 도와서 동해강가 종사기 실어려봐 저 신자지에 그 말했으고라 지금 메달레도 동해레네 다음에 송사 다이나 그 샘교하기를 실어지려 최대체고 말했던 데서 요 말아 그 최대 야부체고 그래서 지단 류 내단테 들으시래서 시다 신자 신부체 요 말해서 딜레 신자 신부체 아니 류 있고 고려 신자 신부체 때 차를 내버려 차도 그러라 강에 마음을 쏘여라 소소소리야 된디까지 대신 메달레도 동안에 담에 쏘서 어디 가서 이 쪼아지 베시 베천서도 다기리 자롱기리 베선 돈나는 연구도 와 자와다 내 마부조에 시르바세 근데 텔량에서 신자체를 그리 베세 저기도 와 거기 신자체에 민두 삼거라 근데 신자체에 맨날 딸 다고 자고 말으면서나 다고 자고 그랬어요 다고 말jam다는데 소소 동해갈 동해 연구래 류데 다고 잡지 그 동해 시대 진게 이나야 딜라테네 개월랍 첨부투에 요래 송겨라 류네 다다르 통메제 대단하야 대송샤스 류데 원에서는 소소 내가 겐게들래 자식이어라 원에서는 다 내가 제시 제시대 류기 지도 나의 사회 고고 망아지요래 사회 고게 통해 고게 담에다 고아도 아니 때에 동에 마부시 지기도 와 세자가 소보데 tinde지 매나는 가지고 깔레tin데 개 연구 말도 소보데 야부초 통계시 나자매게 사매고 통게 야부초 통계시나 녀저게 요 말도 진짜 류니 다다르 통매게서 대단하야 대송샤시나 류티 송교 야부초를 다스 초대 야부초를 했어라 대단해 대송샤 팀된 예린 소안에 텔레송음 첨부쳐서 류디 야부지 당당 중앙이나 데이터를 추tum단 대바 미개와 주파 개와 주투 개와랍 첨부 참바자와 장주섬을 써봐 공개지나 류디가 빼펜토요래 송거라 딜레선음 첨부치 류딘 디토네 선음 자심부 소교와래세 계속자 개심부 쪽으로서다 올해 딱 마다 쳐서야 딱 결지라
So here, this first section is then the sort of way in which we seek reality by means of the Buddha's teachings on dependent arising. So here, it's actually like more specifically how we search out the view. And so the view can refer to many different kinds of things, but really it's getting at the sort of the way that things are. And it is from this kind of teaching on dependent arising that we can come to an understanding of the way that things are in terms of their being impermanent. All things that are conditioned are impermanent, and all of those things that are contaminated, that are conditioned by our ignorance and our various afflictions and so forth, are in the nature of suffering. And so it is in this way that we can, by searching out or by sort of using this understanding of the kind of investigation of cause and effect, to understand the way that things actually actually are. So here it is when we begin to, I mean, most other sort of schools or philosophies would say that something is arisen either from itself, it comes about just sort of due to the own causes that it has within itself, or that it comes about from an intrinsically existent other. Or again, we have those kinds of views that see things as arising causelessly or from causes that are somehow permanent and so forth. But according to the Buddha's teachings, in terms of what will come to be in the future, when we examine the way that things actually are, we can know that based upon the various causes. So when we are talking about sort of investigating the nature of things, searching out the view in terms of the way that things exist or the way that they are, we should do so by way of investigating cause and effect. And really, our kind of knowledge of cause and effect is such that we can really see the way things come about. We can know from our own direct experience and from inference based upon that when we engage in positive and good kinds of causes, those are going to lead to good results. And so it is, again, based upon this teaching of dependent origination that we can come to sort of know how it is that we achieve our own happiness, or how it is that we eliminate the kinds of sufferings that we experience, based upon investigating into the nature of things, which really means looking at the kind of way of cause and effect. So here there is a verse which says that this teaching of dependent origination is able to eliminate all kinds of the sort of web or the nets of wrong views, because this teaching of dependent origination eliminates that kind of misconception that things arise causelessly, or that they arise from some kind of a permanent creator, a permanent cause, or that they arise from the thought, the intention of a creator, or that they're somehow sort of arisen without any kind of cause or permanent cause. All of those kinds of wrong views are eliminated through this proper understanding of dependent origination, of looking at causality. And so based upon this kind of understanding of causality, it gives us a kind of understanding of our own ability to create what will happen in the future. Whatever kinds of experiences we are going to have in the future are dependent upon the kind of causes that we are creating now. And this gives us the ability to see that we can change things. So when we examine, again, by looking at dependent origination, this helps us to understand the way that things are in terms of their being impermanent. So first of all, things don't remain for even a moment. They are constantly subject to causality, such that they're not static or remaining. So therefore, through this kind of teaching of dependent origination, one can understand impermanence. And then from that, by looking at what kind of causes we are experiencing in terms of there being, we're under the control of our karma and afflictions, and thus the kind of results that we experience are in the nature of suffering. So all of the various faults, the kinds of sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, all of the kinds of things that we sort of experience without control are really because of the fact that we are under the control of our karma and afflictions, those causes that we have previously created that lead to our current suffering. And so here, again, this kind of situation that we are in terms of our suffering is described as being sort of the basis to feel a kind of depression or a renunciation. Again, when we are using dependent origination and this understanding of causality to establish these kinds of things, it is the case that, yes, we are sort of discouraged or depressed with the kind of life that we have right now, given that it is within the nature of suffering that we have to experience birth, aging, sickness, and death, and so forth. But here, it's not the case that we should just sort of like, oh, well, this life that I have is the basis of suffering, so just forget about it. I'm not going to take care of myself. I'm not going to think about my health. I'm not going to pay attention to this at all. Because there is a verse which explains that it is on the basis of this kind of body that we are able to accumulate a great deal of virtue. So it's not right that we are that we be incredibly attached, kind of grasping and clinging for this sort of life that we have, or this body that we have that is really sort of like this pit of suffering. But it is on the basis of this body that we are able to accumulate a great deal of virtue. So although we can see our enemy, our body as being like an enemy, if we didn't have this kind of basis, then we wouldn't be able to engage in a great undertaking of virtue. So here, again, this kind of understanding of causality, of examining the way that things are based upon cause and effect, leads us to see that even though this kind of body that we have, we are able to establish that it is impermanent and that it is in the nature of suffering, given that we are under the control of our karma and afflictions. But it's also the case that we have this kind of potential in that we can create causes for the future. So here, based upon our sort of understanding of dependent origination that really allows us to infer things through cause and effect, we can understand these other types of points about the way that things are, from their being impermanent and suffering and selfless and empty and so forth.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, that is. Oh, then Sanjay Chum Dendegi Songdua, Sanjay Chum Dendegi Kasore. Kunji Tunge Samatam Jede, Ne Say, Tewat Samatam Jede, Ne Chinye Yusungu Yomara. Sibe Sungu Church, Lam Nene Kitcha Nam Latin Songdua, Siba Koag, Tunge Church, Lam, Tewat of Lam Gadang, Kunsul Ten Yusungara. Nyamyo Shingi Yose, Shensan Shimbana Sungu Yusungara. Sibe Sungu Church, Lam Nene Kitcha Nam Latin Soda. Tishin Shiba Tamba de Kitcha Nam de Chaco sauce. Tishin Shiba loves a Tamba border. Kiranzo the Cutie Ya, Tiwapa Kiwatu Ya, Cutie Papa, Karakara Cuta and Drebin Drawasham Pachene, till along the Chene, Tewatoya, the Tungese, Tapshiche would Esunguda. Tishin Shiba Tamba de Kitcha Nam de Chaco sauce. The Naranzo so in but the Songiora. Sanjay Chumdendege, Kangapa, Tungese, the Autumn Jetober Jay, Mesonra. Kasanga, Tumnatic, but Chui Mitrushiva. Not there, not true Kangal tree, Jamnetic, but down to the Sarah Tindegia, to the Yorton so, or Tinde Madisongora. Tumnatic, but Chui Mitrus. Droid Dongechag and Meselas. Droeton at the Chag Passe to Esimedosa. Niji talk by Shala Pometa, Coralia, Tap the shit of the Yandamabu or the Tezukangapa, Jay Mendosora, Jay Unete Nagra Shingira. Niji talk by Shala Pometa, Poya Medusa. Chuni Tamba temperature, Rangin Yamson Yawa, Rangin Musum to Kimbate, Chuni, Mobile Nature Tambate, Part 10, Tina she can do Lando Chabana. And a draw top to a draw top to this over the Oti in the co. So rally, but it's so tank it all. Tension Jabber Jones city in a Cadinada. Target so target, Chishitella, so Quasero. So the sausage order, Shandazo, O Marese. Shandazo, you know, Lando, you named a Tanishimato. Never so as you, Marisogua. Oh, I didn't do what I shared to do teacher. Oh, yeah, dangerous.
So here, as the Buddha has taught, the path which leads us out of samsara is something that the Buddha teaches to us, but we have to do this for ourselves. Again, the Buddha has said that it is based upon, like, I teach you the path that allows you to get out of samsara, but you have to do this for yourself. This is not something that someone else can do for you. The Tathagata, the the one gone to thusness, is the teacher, the guide. But you have to follow after that. The Buddha is teaching based upon his own experience. But again, as another kind of text says, it's not as though the Buddha can just eliminate all of your sufferings, that the Buddha has that kind of power. As the famous verse says, a Buddha can't wash away your negativities with water. He can't sort of remove your suffering with his hands. He can't pass along his realizations to you, but rather through teaching the way that things are, through teaching reality, you're able to be freed. And so it is based upon the Buddha's own direct kind of knowledge, that knowledge that he then passes to us of what it is that we should take into practice and what we should abandon, that we are able to gain freedom. No one else can do this for you. As other verses say, you are really principal. You are your own master, in that you have to do for yourself. It's not as though someone else is able to come along and give you realizations or remove your suffering or give you happiness. But as all of these kinds of verses emphasize, really the Buddhist teachings place you as the principal, as the one that is responsible for your own happiness and suffering, and thereby you have to take responsibility for that. So here, that's kind of a brief sort of overview of what we had already covered last time in the text.
Oh yeah, that is. That tension ke tanya jebe ko ba se der da. Tension de bar jo a se sanje chum den de tanya jebe do. Menge ta ane ti je songa ra jo te tension de bar jo a de sam lo tanya ni ngo ra. Oh sanje chum den de tension de bar jo a se be trai tanya jebe ko ba de se do. Oh ngo bo nam ra ni jo a raran keje ke kyu ke la temba yimbe kyu me ba jo ma yishes ta ta de ya kyu me ba le tene jo se se do wa o te su na she ma re song ga ra ngo bo nam ra ni jo a raran keje ke ene raran keje ke kyu ke la temba yimbe se raran keje ke ne ba yang ke kyu da ke le tene ke yo re song ga ra kyu me bala jungu mare se te nga zu namdi ka su gwe wa kyu me ne ke yu na shing dong ra shi ke je ji nga ra zu yu sa ta ni sa shing dong de ke te kyu me ne ke yu na ani shenda sa je tam je le ke sho re se ra kyu me le ke na ta to ke wa se yu tam je le ke go re yu chi le ke na tam je le ke go ra tu chi le ke na yaga ke na ya kunga ke gora ko kyuke ko mara yaga ke kunga ke mara sana ko kyuchi yebe ta re sara o ta kunga de gyudi me sa tramu che sa ke to go ma yaga ko de ke gora se kyujin yeba ranga ke wa se do tu yu kashel me ke tu kashel me ke se na ranga me ke wa re te na ko gyutan ke yeba ta che sara kashel me yi longba kashel me ye kare tu kashel me jo kare sana keba yoba de ta kyuda ke sodu ki gore kyuda ke masana ki go marse te dogro sada kyu me ba ke na yu chi le ke na yu thamje le ke go tu chi le ke na tu thamje le ke go yu chi le ma ke na yu thamje le ma ke go tu chi le ma ke na tu thamje le ma ke go se ti she ge ora ti kyusen she gore kyumiri kyo yon she yo maris yona ko di kyusen she gore she yo mare ranga kyo yena dile ken dile ma je kare su ta kyujin ji mane she keba she to yo mara ngo na rangi joa rangi keje ge kyujin la temba yembe gyume ba joa ma yin shara kyujin le junzo ya gyu tamje le debu tamje kyo arbasna o te ma re shara kyu tamje le debu kyo ma yin rara keje ge neba soso ngebe kyu sokwana rara soso keje ge gyu dan ken di timo ma yin ko keje ge neba chi yo gora je ke ya ge neba yo gore shindo ke ya ge neba yo ge kyu de ge te ke ge ma to sama tamje shindo ke ge ma ro kyu sama tamje rara keje ge neba soso ngebe gyujin tsokwa na tedagan gyurwe negam nasa rana keshi neba soso ngebe gyujin mambuchi tsok tezo konzo gyurwa chi chene konzo yoba tsamke kego mara konzo ten rebu de kewa dan tumbe Juroji Chen, Yamdo Son to do Juroji Chen and Debu de Kegura. Medaba in Juach and Kekudo, Madame Joma Chen Koyova, some Kegor Sigmarto. Jutamjel and Debu Tamjekio, my Barara, catching in never so nebe. Jujin Sobana, the dog in Jure Negab Neba Nile, Debu Kewa in Besse. Niju Genji, Dangin, Debu Dinam. Rani Jonga, Wanjula Sowa, Janichu Genji, New Genji dance, Jidan come to Sora. Choose to tell a long job about some gentles or cigar. New juice and no that juice. New Genji Dangis. Jidan to do that, Kaji Jishi, Nimbu can jig by Basonda, Jidan Jidancer. New Genji Dangi, Debu Dinamse. Then no Genji Dan that tell a long and get and get some gentles Sungara. Then Rani John that was a country Jungorsana. She attended the Nagated to the country Jungorsana. Onjula saw one Jidangi Chibabo Kangajan Nugent Day. That one Jula saw by Jagali in that. Onjula saw by Tender Cheva in Secha, the gay auto. Dear Maris, Sigurta, Nambachana. Nujujan Jidangi Chibabo Kangajan Nugent Day. Nichu didan dinda wa chimbar shawo nyambe kongbe jugwa loyo yoe kongbe jugwa tinde kuku do same tan dilin de kuku sam tinde sam tan so shama de sigora loyo yowa de chebala te me ku shense shenyan debu namje shenyan se debu namje rang rang ge jula tu takba ta tu tal ro sa so tu takba se tu je wang ge tu cheba bo sigora tu gi wang ge kang ge mo bo chi go re chung ne de tu de de sigora shenyan debu nam rang rang ge ju tu takba ta tu de chame la so ba takba ta se sa so tu de chame takba so ro chame ta chame chibu ta chiru ba zo da ya shen de chame ge ji ma mo she ge da chame yin se ro ro o tu de chame ji de che ba bo so chame o tu de chame se ro tu de ma mo she de mi ro so da ta ba da chame chibu ju ka ya mi ro la se 주진 남네 차단 제반이 시 주인나다 개인나다 가리나 코란코란에 속바로 세지요 속으로 마도 코라치 주로 수지 먹어 세지 직장장 두개시요 말해서 말아 주진 남네 차단 제반이 시 주진기 차강 지여바 요소 만주어를 껴하면라 주딘 jor고 요다 던도 사변답이네 사변데 코칼리칼리 주네 드네 아니고 태고도와 사변된 교네 사변된 교라 신게데 내 추다 르다 저다 셀라 소바 대속 지요도 되게 제선 교라 짓다네 되는 대부도 깨고를 마도 대부 고란티네 요는 수라와도 태요하라고 달에 깨워서 라와도 두배 교시할 때는 샤기에서 때는 요 말을 다게 샤기니가 규밀이 깨워요 말을 땡진 대버를 중에 깨워래서 거라 다시 깨워되나 다시 가야 기그 말에 땡진 내버려 깨워래 선거라. 내가 그래서 용서 만주한 대부 깨워 매배. 그 만주한 대부 거를 선밤 포함하이시. 그때 만주를 제제 사변 도도도 샤버든 누구야래 돼서 요 말도. 사변데 파 주라서 럼바첸티나네 야 누구가 못하고 거도. 그 만주한 대부 거를 선바 요 말에서.
거기민도 단다. 세서. 단다 거기민도게. Can you all hear Geshe La at all?
다 거기도 왜?
야, 단다 거기도.
다 주진 여봐 하고서 주진 매네 지금 매서 뭐 저기래. 주단 게 속발 때는 좋은 거를 다세. Oh, yeah, Dibasha. Takavalina. Kani Maguna Kash. Oh, Debu did on the Kugin the Chadan Cheba Dedroswa. Kugin the Chadan Cheba Nishi, Kugin Chakan, Chiba Yoso, Manju and Debu or Kyo maybe. Two Manju and Debu or dry your mother, Sambas, draw your mother Sigora. Nuguri station and Yukuran Toto Kuranteja, Ninuguri Dumato, Sabede, Sabi Ben Jurne, and it near Nugumbush in the Togudwa. Sabam, poor my inches, couldn't debut or poor my inches. That much one a young Sange. Kujin Namne, Gas and Jatadaya and Drebu, and Joa Mebara. Kukunch and a teaches on Drebu Joa Mayimbar. Ya Jude Panga, and ya Shandaji, some time the Chimadini late and Yachimaki and the Tendeo Barwa. Jude gas in Badanyam tomato Drebuti Kewarmato, Jude Gatane, my gives Yachimaki and the Tendeo Marisigora. Dicaresana. Jujin and gas and Jatada and Drebunam Joa Mebar. Tati. Nella soprattutto da Taviaci di 800 anni si guarda, Giudipa Gasane, e debuti Magi Vegetaria, Chamaci Chiesona, e Giudan Delne Yungomara, Giuda Giutudia Kigiomara, Giutuja Yungura, Nielenda Tezo. Tata and Debu Nam Shua Meva, Giutuja. Debu Kunchan, teachers and Debu Joya Maybe. Sunday Tomé to Jungawada, Tunyam to Debu Kewa in Bessa. Sandas and Sangs and Agura, Dola Kayash and Dokashia told you. Tina Chala Tessin, we are told Romanda. Sunday Tomé, the church of the Atoson, Chedimama Rura, Chedima don't told what dinner she tunyam to Yongo, Chidin Gawada, Yelling to the Gawada. Drebuti Nigeria Tango Reso. Sunday Thomas to Jungawada, Tunyam to Drebutia Yembe, Ku Parisheba Meber, Drawer joined us all Judah, Parisha and Kio Marese, Tense, Delvar Juare, Segora. Oh, teach them to do Mount Anna House.
So here, again, picking up in the text, and some of the, I'll try to send along for those who are interested in the Tibetan, but there are different sort of subheadings sometimes for some of these various sections. So this is beginning this sort of purpose, the reason why we use this term dependent origination. And so here, again, all things arise in dependence on their respective causes and conditions. They don't arise without a cause. And they do not, and not just any cause can produce any effect. Rather, when the causes and conditions endowed with the specific and particular potential for producing each phenomena come together and undergo a sequential transformation, the effect arises. So here, earlier, there had been a quotation from the Pramanavartaka, which I believe I forgot, which is basically refuting this idea that things could arise either causelessly or from some sort of a permanent cause like time, because it explains that if it were the case that something had a permanent cause, then it would have to arise at all times. If it's always got the cause there, then that thing would have to arise at all times. Or if we say that something has a sort of permanent cause, it would also have to arise in all places. We wouldn't have sort of a certain situation where you see something come about. We can determine that things are causal because, for example, when you plant crops, they come at a particular time. If it didn't matter, if they weren't causal or they had a permanent cause, then it wouldn't be the case that they sometimes come about, like say in the spring or in the fall, or like in the fall you're able to harvest because it's the proper time, because the sort of causes and conditions have come about. But if it were the case that those things had permanent causes or were causeless, then they should come about sort of at any time. But that's not the case. Things don't arise causelessly, and it's the case that they need their sort of respective cause. It has to be the particular kind of cause that has the potential to give rise to a particular result. So a rice seed has the potential to give rise to rice. It doesn't have the potential for something else. And so here it is in the context of understanding this, that we can see that the production, thus the products of both the animate and inanimate worlds need not arise in dependence upon the expressed will or thought of a divine creator, such as Ishvara, who thinks, I will cause this to arise. Rather, again, they're only able to come about. All of the sort of inanimate things as well as the animate, the beings within it, are only able to come about because of dependent origination. This eliminates the sort of ideas that are written here, like the idea that the sort of divine will brings things into existence, or it continues here. Furthermore, effects are not caused by a permanent entity called time, a permanent partless particle, or a single indivisible cause. So all causes and conditions are composite. They invariably have parts, and none of these causes and conditions can produce an effect without themselves undergoing transformation. So again, here when it comes to causes and conditions, we see that when things arise causally, that inevitably means that there's not a single individual cause. And so when we look at things like partless particles, there can't be this sort of single final permanent indivisible sort of cause that leads to the production of everything. And nor is it the case that it is just the sort of stopping or the cause itself that becomes the result. No cause reaches its resultant state or is somehow transferred to its resultant state without undergoing some kind of change. So here, it isn't just the sort of stopping of the cause that leads to the result. There needs to be this kind of continuity between the cause and its particular result. So there's sort of a transformation that needs to occur. It's not that the cause just becomes the result or that it transfers somehow, but there needs to be transformation within that cause such that the effect is able to arise. So continuing here, moreover, it is not the case that the causes and conditions cease and then the effects somehow arise. Again, we need to have this sort of continuity. Nor is it the case that the continuum of the causes ceases and thereafter the effects arise. There needs to be that continuum. Instead, the cessation of the causes and the production of the effects are simultaneous and connected without any cessation of the continuum. So here we can think about this like one would think about a scale, sort of where you have two sides. When one side goes up, the other goes down. There's a simultaneity to that. So too, when it comes to our understanding and investigating causes and conditions, it's not the case that a cause just stops or that it transfers to the effect, but rather, like the sort of sides of a scale going up, there's a transformation happening, a continuity between that cause and its particular result that it has the ability to generate.
Tena chum den de ye su do ngobu nam ji chwa kyu ji me ba da ngobu nam ji chwa de kyu da ki me ba la chi yo ma re she rawa du tu ba go ba la kyu ji me ne de bu ko ra ya ke na ne rawa du ke ri chi wa kyu ji mo go she ne ko ra ke ngu yu na ne rawa du tu ba go ba la kyu ji la ten ne sam ten jin se ten jin del ba ri chwa se ten se de tanda kalkoresne ngobona gyumene kigmarese kyuji mebada ane ngobonam jungade kyuji meba ta rawadu tuba kyuji mene debu kora rawadu tuba gogwala tene sam tenjin debar junga tense tire sera jurme je takba jurme Nekare Jurmi je Thabkhe Juso Mitimbe Jula Goche Oh yeah. Jurmi je Thabkhe Juso Mitimbe Jule Chungwa Goche Delbar Sera. Tenjin Delbar Sede Jura Mebe Thabkhe Jula Soba Debu Kewada Mitimbe Jusira. Jutilian Debu Kewada Timbus Quara, Tagba in Debu Kewada Tingmar, Ko Jura Kagache Yomara. Manjurci Tesha, and take Manjuraci Tesh and getting Debu Kigane, Tuta to Kegoriana, Namia Majekora, Tagwalian, Jurdoch and Debuki Majeko, Juadrake Omara. Jurmeji Tagwe Juso, Mitimbe Julia Joa, and Gosh in Delbarse. Judan came to the Sone, they bang Nilanding Guard to the Unico, subject and deputy Jungura, Tension Delba de Yungudua. Ko Takwache and Picket Kagan Juan Dromagun and Dake Omar and Delba Marwa, Tension Delba Mara. Delba Reshedas. Rawado Truba and Debu May Janse. Ko Rawado Truba Mara, Judan King in Luburtuba Church of Yordo. Chemachi Kigorde. Debunam Tene Meba Maimbe, Ragi Kujile, Rabdu Kewada, Tene Choala Gone, Joa Shixo Sos, Jung said, so on the Meba Marin Jungres, or the Tunda Sumdriji, Tunda Sungudwa, or Dishikuna and Dirchamado.
So here, I think I forgot from the earlier section that again here, when one is eliminating these four kind of types of production that are espoused by others, like things arising from no cause or things arising from a cause that is itself or an intrinsically existent other, when one refutes those four types of production, it's not as though then no production is the sort of intended outcome of that, but rather the Buddha asserts that things are instead dependently originated, dependently produced, and thereby that's how they come into existence. It's not that there is no production. But so here, this continuing in the text on page 15, it says, therefore, when the Blessed One spoke the term dependent and linked arising, so here, tenjing zhaowar jungwa, so there's those three sort of terms, dependent and linked and arising. He was using dependent or dependent on causes and conditions to refute the view of objects being produced causelessly and being established independently. So this term of dependent, like being reliant or dependent upon something else, refutes the idea that things could be established independently or not have any sort of cause. And then he used the term linked, connected, to refute the view that things arise from a discordant cause, an enduring, changeless cause. So again, the cause has to be concordant with the result, which in this case means that it needs to be impermanent, something that is subject to transformation. To say that there is a permanent cause, it would have to always be causing or never bring things about. And then finally we have, he was using arising to show that effects are not completely non-existent, nor are they independently established. Rather, they fully arise from their own causes and conditions dependently. So here, the importance of this term arising is that there's nothingness or things don't come into being, but rather they do come into being, they arise, but in a dependent and linked kind of way.
Oh yeah, oh that is so.
So we'll stop there for today.
Yeah, oh yeah.
The time is up.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it have long, may I pacify completely all outer impressions. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the dark darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzing Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends. Thank you again, Rinpoche, and thank you for your clear interpretation, Katrina, and we'll hope to see everyone again online next Thursday.
그냥 순천 낭야 라투체낭 세기오레스.
어야.
제마제용.
어야, welcome. 어야. 좋지. 알았어. 바이바이. 좋지. 도착.
Recording stop.